Welcome, everybody, to the second part of Points Beyond the Club. Tonight we are going to talk about mental health, and the previous panel, DJ Shamaran said something really interesting, that their collective Clau had a collective burnout, and that they had a meeting about their emotions before they had a meeting about production. And so that really got me thinking about mental health and what we're going to discuss today, and how they dealt with it was not going on with their collective, but there is many ways to deal with this subject. And tonight I am joined by three guests. Here is Sami Chong Sin Fook, and in the middle is Anke Straten, and matching outfits is Veronique de Leon. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, yeah. I go under the name of DJ Slimfit as well. I organize parties with the Collective of the Planet, and I'm currently a student as well, doing a master's. And yeah, Mark of POING Agency is my agent, so hence why I'm also here, filling in for DJ Fuck Off, who's unfortunately sick.
Thanks for mentioning. So DJ Fuck Off will be playing tonight at Perron, but they were not feeling so well at the moment. So they decided to take some time off and take care of their well-being. But they'll be there tonight.
Overworking.
Well, they're trying to take care of themselves.
My name is Anke. I work as a club manager in Amsterdam, also as a bookings agent at Future West. Besides that, I'm also having my own company where I train people to work in the event industry on a bit more healthy way than I did when I started. And on the background, I'm trying to get my bachelor's for 10 years already.
Wow, yeah. That's a lot on your plate.
I just love studying.
Wow. Yeah. Veronique?
Yes, I'm Veronique. I'm a former event professional. I've been working in this industry for about 10 years. And since 1 year, I started my own health coach practice and consultancy. I do a consultancy as well for artists and other professionals from the industry. So I basically coach people about their mental health, their physical health. I do workshops. I also work at festivals, but then as a health coach. That's what I'm up to nowadays.
Okay, great. So tonight we will be discussing the subject of mental health and well-being. This panel discussion will be for about 45 minutes. After that, we'll have some time to take questions from the audience. But we'll start for now. So what do you think are the main factors for overwork, stress, and both artists and workers minimize these factors without jeopardizing their careers? So how do you manage?
It's a big question to start off.
Sorry. Well, it's a big subject.
Well, in itself, the music/event industry is already quite unhealthy. It's not a 9-to-5 surroundings. You're surrounded by a lot of stimulants. There's a lot of loud music, a lot of people around you. So if you're sensitive to surroundings, it's already like a lot of energy. Next to the fact that there's also substance abuse, alcohol. There's always temptation around you. It's also a very high energy, fast-paced industry that's also very competitive. And then there's also the social media aspect since these last few years. So all in all together, it has a very beautiful side, but it also has a very heavy and ugly side that is not talked about enough. And everybody faces the same struggles, whether you're an artist or whether you're working behind the scenes. Often those people are more easily forgotten as well, even though like audio techs and people that do the lights, for example, they work the longest hours. Yeah, those are the first that are forgotten in my experience. So I think the more we talk about these things and the troubles we're all facing, the more we can break the stigma and open the conversation and hopefully support and help each other as well, instead of everybody struggling by themselves and basically facing the same problems. So yeah.
Yeah, I see you both nodding. Anke?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with everything Veronique mentioned. And I think on top of that, what was also a struggle for me is that I live the opposite life as my environment. So my brothers, my sisters, my parents, they all live a different life. So it's also really hard to maintain your relationships, have enough sleep, go to your job, but also go to the family stuff. So I think that was for me an extra addition on top of that. The work itself is pretty hard. But I think your question was also how we maintain sane in this environment. I don't have the answer on that. Like, if anybody has that, please let us know. But I think it's really important, or at least what really helped me, is to set a certain goal. To know what I want, to try to have as little distraction as possible, focus on what added up to my goal and what added up to my achievement, and also sometimes say no.
Yeah, that's the hard part. We'll get to that later. Sami, for you, what are factors contributing to this stressful environment?
I think because also largely a part of the music industry, even within the underground scene, is defined by also this tendency to keep up appearances, of being constant, showing like a glamorized image of life, of self, of social interactions, which really is very hard when one experiences downfalls or difficulties or stress or pain or suffering in any kind of way. So this sort of mechanism of showing your best side online really causes this severe sense of individualism, and also this very big gap in the inner experience versus the outer reality that is very sheer in most cases, or in a lot of cases actually. So I guess that is something I'm also still learning how to navigate within, and yeah, building a sanity within that context is quite hard. I guess artists would need a lot of psychological guidance that should be normalized within agencies, within the work constructions of club culture in general, but also there should be more of these like kind of organizations that, for example, Veronique also leads, where people can go to know about, where they can without any stigma share their experiences and have someone that listens to them.
Yeah, so you reflect to the point where you already know that you're not doing so well and asking for help, but what are these first signs of that you need help? Would you, Anke?
Yeah. If I look back at it, I think I can recognize them in the future. But first of all, it was definitely not clear when it happened. So don't be too hard on yourself if you don't realize it yet, but you do feel something already. But how it started for me, I noticed it already that my food pattern was completely off. I ate little bits. I forgot to eat for 12 till 10 hours. I forgot to drink. I forgot to go to the toilet. So those little things that a human needs to do to live and to survive, they were just on the background of my daily life. So I think that is definitely already a sign that something is up. I think also that, what I said before, I was not seeing my parents, I was not seeing my friends outside the club then. And if they wanted to meet me, they needed to come to the club. So that was really a bit of an unhealthy relationship with my environment. So I think that was definitely something that it's kind of concrete, you can measure those things. And I think for me personally, it was a slippery slope. Like, it came in bit by bit. It's not like, oh shit, now today I realize I'm not doing well. It was bit by bit, and I think it was every day a bit harder to get out of it without asking help. So if I reflect back, I kind of forgot to enjoy. I think that was the first realization. You just want to get the job done, you want to make everybody happy, but when you're done with your shift, you're actually crying instead of laughing.
That is so recognizable.
Yeah.
So Somi and I met because we've worked together, and I just told you while we were here before, we met during a time when I wasn't doing so well. I had two moda. Either I was angry or I could cry. And so, yeah, that's very recognizable. Somi, for you, what are these signs?
Yeah. Well, I think there were signs earlier on that I didn't feel well, but I guess I didn't register them because they weren't so physical. I guess the first mental symptoms are that you're getting depressed, feel sort of dissociated from this whole environment that celebrates without yourself really enjoying it as well. But then also these, for instance, I at a certain point when I was really overworked, I started to faint, or I had a constant headache. So those are really severe, of course, alarming physical symptoms that also tells your body that it's it has gone beyond limits. So I guess that's also very important to stay in touch with how you feel, also physically, and check that constantly. Yeah.
And for you, Veronique?
Yeah, I haven't had a burnout, but I was pretty close, I think twice throughout the years in my Booker days. For me, it was also the social distancing, isolating myself more and more, a lot of spiraling at night, but also you mentioned, physical signs, my period started disappearing. I started having, this constant feeling of pressure, but also tension in your neck. I had constant neck pain, constant back pain. My shoulders were completely frozen like this. Weight gain or weight loss, it goes like this. Feeling detached from your body as well, not being in touch with your body, not feeling centered. But there's a lot of signs of nervous system dysregulation, basically, that can either manifest physical or mental. And it's also the combination that, makes it so heavy for somebody, because it's both the physical and the mental, and how do you get out of that? There's a lot of things, but like you said as well, the lack of joy, that's a big one that I hear from everybody. You start doing this work because you love it so much. You love music, you love performing, you love the scene. And at a certain point, it just doesn't bring you joy anymore. I was booking lineups and I was listening to music, and I was just I don't really care, actually. I booked this lineup, but meh. So that for me was a very big sign that I wasn't able to listen to music anymore and enjoying it anymore. And that felt very, very sad, but at the same time I was also so numb that I couldn't care anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, that must be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard sign. So we now talk about a lot within work, but you, and this might sound weird, but you also have free time, your own time. And so this combination of your work versus your personal time, how do you balance that, or how did you balance at the time versus how do you do that now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is very difficult in this industry because your work and life are so intertwined. Because a lot of people you work with are also your friends, or they become your friends. You start this work out of a passion, so you also like to listen to music in your free time. You like to listen to sets, you like to dig for music, you like to dance. But if that becomes your work, at a certain point I was working in festivals as well, and I couldn't go to a festival anymore without looking at how it was built, if everything was safe, and blah, 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 even if I didn't have anything to do with that festival.
Yeah.
So it's also hard to find a way of having fun and letting go, blowing off steam, that isn't involved with that, if that was your go-to before. So it is very important to find something that also recharges your battery and that has nothing to do with this industry, maybe.
What floats your boat now?
My dog, sourdough baking, working out, being in nature, also vegetable gardening, yeah, like you do as well.
Yeah.
But also being with people that maybe have nothing to do with that world. So like stepping out of that bubble. But there's so many things you can do, hopefully, outside of music that will also bring you joy and also make you realize that there's more to life and to the world than this industry and this scene. Even though sometimes when you're in the midst of it, it really feels like that there's all there is. But when the pandemic hit and I was standing still for 2 years, I was just canceling festival lineups and I realized, oh, whoa, there's actually still a world outside of this. And the world will also go on, even though it might feel like you will lose everything if you have a bad gig or bad review or bad comment or whatever. So, yeah, I guess work-life balance is a tricky one. That's also one that I work on with a lot of clients. And what I always start off with is scheduling, but also scheduling in rest, also scheduling in social media breaks, to really detach from everything. That's a big one, because it's also, your dopamine is dysregulated because you're just constantly checking those notifications to see if you get likes. You're constantly comparing yourself to everybody that you see online. But it's also just mostly highlight reels. People only show their good sides on social media, mostly. And I hope that will change as well, that people will also be able to be vulnerable and show their shadow sides a bit more. But I think the more you can protect yourself in that and setting boundaries for yourself by actually like say, okay, today I will put my phone away and I won't look at it for a few hours. Today we'll go into nature to recharge or do something else. I think that will already make a big impact by setting those clear boundaries and stepping away a bit. Yeah.
How is that for you, Sami?
That hurts. Hello? Yeah. That is quite hard, actually. To be very honest, I'm still very much in a phase where I'm learning how to balance this out. It's like you said, like it crosses your digital life as well, which is continuously there, and also manipulates you into being there, because as soon as you miss out on anything, you're not part of that world anymore that is so fast-paced and so much about also this rating culture, which also crosses like your social life, right? So it's constantly also about this reputation, the maintainment of being a visually present artist. So there are many things at hand at the same time, and I guess setting like very clear boundaries together with someone else that can help to navigate within those problems would be crucial for me. So I would love to talk to you after the show.
Let's do that.
But it is very, very hard. It is incredibly hard. So I'm really happy to be talking about it and also learning about how this has affected me. I've also just recently found out that I had been suffering from a burnout that also took a very, very long time to even realize, so that is,
it's a slippery slope, like Anke said.
100%.
Anke, do you want to expand on that?
I still wanted to add that for me, I think the biggest help was the realization that you're not in it alone. So that you need to ask for help. And first of all, what you said, asking help for people that are completely out of the industry you're working at felt very refreshing for me. So I had like normal friends, that's how I call them to my club friends.
Love normal people.
Yeah, normal people with a stable life. That it felt very refreshing to know that like the earth is not flat or anything. So outside the event industry is also still something.
How do you do that? How do you ask for help?
That's actually a wonderful question. For me, I went very deep, so it was not really, possible to ignore anymore. But to prevent to come there, I think it really helped to find, first of all, like-minded people. So first of all, we already met before because we did kind of the same job. We talked about small stuff already before. Also with other people in the same role or in the same industry that you feel comfortable with. Don't be afraid to ask, or at least to tell your experience. And I think you're surprised by how many other people have the same experience. And I think if you start the conversation, you also got surprised by the fact how open the industry is, and that it's really not weird to have that feeling that besides the glitter world, that you also feel not very glittery about it at every moment of the day. So yeah, find like-minded people. I think that maybe is the easiest step. You can find recognition in each other. But for me also friends. If you trust them already and you're not sure if they understand what you're feeling, at least you trust them already. So that's already the first boundary that's gone in that sense.
Yeah, thank you. So we already spoke a little bit about it. It's the fear of missing out. I can imagine that also being an artist, that makes it very difficult for you not to be at the party. But how do you deal with this in this performance-driven industry?
Yeah, that's very hard, actually. I also, with my former agent, I had this discussion because at a certain point they were like, oh, we feel like you're not showing yourself enough within like the club scene, which was the case, but I was at the same time graduating from 2 bachelors at the same time, so that was very fucking hectic. And that really appealed to my insecurity of not showing myself enough to the public, which has like real consequences for the rest of your career, the networking position that you have. So I think this sort of insecurity within artists is something that also agencies and agents and anyone working in the industry should be very mindful about, because it really can trigger a lot of overcompensation, unhealthy behaviors of overachieving, going across your own well-being. So I guess that's a very big point to also realize that artists have boundaries and have
May the promoters hear it tonight.
We're not just products.
Thank you. And for you, Veronique, fear of missing out, is this something you recognize, or you're like, well, not so much?
I used to have it big time. Yeah.
Okay.
Back in my party days. But I changed as a person, and therefore my values also changed because I became a different person. And as soon as you start to value other things, you strive towards that, and then all the other stuff doesn't really seem to matter anymore, so the FOMO becomes less. So that's also something I try to work on with people, to like make them realize, why do you do this? What is your passion, like the one thing that you're striving for, or multiple things that you're striving for, like why do you do this? Why do you want to be an artist? What brings it to you? What do you want to strive for? And then you start to realize that the goal you're working towards is the most important thing, like you also mentioned, and that all the other stuff is nice, but it's not what it's about. And I'm actually also striving more days, looking for the joy of missing out instead of the fear of missing out. So I'm trying to switch that mindset into something healthier. And now, my last few days at the school, I was sometimes also like prioritizing my rest. So I would be at home when there was an epic night going on in the final months of the club. And I was actually, you know what? I'm bummed, I'm gonna miss it, but I'm also so happy to be going to bed early and to take care of my health, because that was my value at that time. So I think it's switching the narrative in your head, looking for the values, the things that are important to you, and working towards that. And in that sense, hopefully feeling less bad about what you're missing out on.
Anke?
To be honest, I feel the opposite. So
And what do you mean by opposite then?
Yeah, I actually never really dealt with the fear of missing out. I more
That's great.
Yeah, dealt with
Good
the
for
fear
you.
of needing to be there again.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I abused events a little bit. I went there way too often, and I worked in the club for 4 years. I've been there every weekend, 2 nights a week. So at one point, I was actually really, really happy if I don't need it to be at a party, because for me, I realized that every event is super much fun. Every event, the lineup is great, the people are great, but every week there is actually the same thing happening. So for me personally, I really would love to spend a bit less time in the club.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and as an agent, I know, of course, that it's really important to show your visibility, to be visible, as you said, as an artist as well.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit hypocrite because I tell my artists as well that they need to go out there and be part of it.
And now you know what, you know?
Yeah.
You know what the business is.
Yeah, no, it's definitely part of it, but find your balance in there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this pressure you might feeling, and this performance pressure. It's both for artists as well as for programmers. I think anybody that works within nightlife. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and how you deal with this pressure?
Yeah, I would like to start with that if possible. Yeah, for me, I felt a lot of pressure, but in different ways. I think the biggest pressure I felt was the pressure of myself. Thinking or assuming that other people were expecting stuff from me, so actually I was making the expectation. So I learned that the hard way, and at one point I also realized that there are always so many people with different expectations. So if you decide to listen to somebody, who are you listening to? So that's also really difficult to always pay attention to your environment. If your environment is very fast-paced, as you said, it's very trend-sensitive, so it goes really fast. So it's difficult to know who to listen to. So what was my solution is to start listening to myself. And I think that was the biggest realization I had to maintain a sanity in there. Because I was 20 when I started my club manager job. I was a little girl. I come from the south, from Limburg. So working in the big city was definitely a big step. And yeah, it was really hard to, first of all, be a girl in a man's world, being there very young, being not known in the industry, and you're there with that position. So yeah, the realization to listen to myself was the best one.
Yeah. How about you? I know what you did.
What did I do?
Yeah, I mean, you were a programmer for the school. I would say to at least a lot of people, that's a high pressure, high visibility type of job. How did that go about?
I have to say, I was already in that transition period when I started working at the school. I was a booker at a different organization before that for about 6 years.
Was, right?
Yeah, elevation events, so the festivals, and I also founded Was. And there I had to find out the hard way how it is to be always, putting that pressure on yourself, but it was also put on me by, I think my employer mostly was expecting a lot from me. I was doing the bookings for all the festivals, the artist handling, doing the bookings for the club, doing arts handling for all the artists at the club, being a club manager during the club nights, and also taking care of all the artist handling on the show days. So it was basically like a 3-in-1 job. And there I had to find out the hard way how it can be to just constantly be over-pushing yourself, and then at a certain point your body just says, stop, this is the final straw, we're not going to go any further. And yeah, that's also why I think, also when the school asked me to become one of the bookers, I decided, this is where I'm going to do it differently. So when we were in that application period, I was like, you know what, I want to come and work here for the final year, but it's just 1 year. After this year, I have different plans. And also, I set very clear boundaries. It's like, you know what, fine, but I'm going to be here 3 days a week. I'm going to be leaving before rush hour. I want a work phone. I'm not going to be doing stuff on my private phone anymore. That's a big one, if you're a booker especially. I was like, I don't want to have any phone calls from agents or stuff in the weekend. I'm not doing that anymore. And I was also like, the nights for me are also optional, but I'm not going to do them, because that was the biggest one for me, working in night shifts. That was the thing that really destroyed my health at a certain point. So I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I set very clear boundaries. I was like, hey, you want me to work here? This is how we're going to do it. And luckily, they were very respectful and cooperative in that sense. So yeah, I was lucky in terms of that. And I think that's also where I learned, how to stand up for myself as a people pleaser, recovering people pleaser. But still, there was a lot of pressure, even with those boundaries in place. All eyes are on you if you're booking lineups. And there's also the whole history, of course, so that also puts on some pressure, and you're stepping into the footsteps of somebody that you like very admire, so that puts even more pressure on you. So it's like, it is very heavy and intense, and I think that's also the year that was the most heavy year in my whole career. Even like the 3 jobs at once wasn't as heavy as the year at the school. But I try to focus on the events that we put out and all the things we were accomplishing in those final years, and also the fact that I got to be working there for me was like surreal still. So I just focused on that, like, okay. And I also had a lot of conversations with colleagues about it, that also made it like, okay, I'm not the only one that is carrying all this pressure. We're all in the same boat. And in the end, also trying to realize, like, it's just a club, even though it's a club, it's just a club. We're not surgeons, we're not saving lives,
it's
nobody's
been
gonna
said
die.
before, yeah.
So that's also something we kept on saying to ourselves.
It's only entertainment.
Exactly.
Thank you.
It's supposed to be entertainment.
Well, actually, it's not, and we spoke about that earlier, that it's also creating communities, but yes, it is.
Yeah. So I think that's how we try to keep ourselves sane. So yeah.
How's that for you? How do you deal with the pressure?
I think it's quite hard. I find it quite hard to deal with that pressure, to be honest. But what I try to do now is that I am 100% sure about how I will go to the venue, that everything is arranged from the Uber to like the get in. So there are not any kind of surprises before getting to my gig, because that also costs a lot of energy. I guess also sort of like isolating myself before playing helps me to stay sane, because I have to maintain all my energy to give to the audience, especially because my act is like very, I move a lot when I play, I'm very expressive, and I have this hyper femme character that is like beyond my own energy levels sometimes, so I really need to get it all together before I start getting off. And also I need to like isolate myself a bit after my gig, so most of the time I just go to the dressing room if it's there, and if it's a possibility to be there by myself, I also just do that, just to sort of get grounded again. And I try to meditate before I play, just to get in touch with my body again before getting into the club. But also, it's just still hard, because you're expected to give your all, and you like, it's not necessarily the case that I always feel like giving my all, or that I'm able to give my all, but I'm glad to give my all. But it's also hard to set clear boundaries in that, when people expect something out of a character or a persona that is present and energetic and entertaining. But also a threatening world war puts things a bit more in perspective, I guess. So I guess it's also insane to be still trying to achieve this career within a total chaotic political world situation.
Yeah, and so no, it's fine. So you already talked a little bit about how others can aid to deal with this pressure, and so what can organizations or companies or or anybody you're working with, and then not on a personal level, but more on an organizational level, help? And what would be an effective framework to facilitate well-being and being able to deal with it? Anke?
I think, first of all, every organization in nightlife should hire Veronique for a session, because, I think that what Veronique
I think you're going to be very overworked soon. Thank you.
No, but also, maybe add a cap on the amount of hours that you work.
Yeah.
It's kind of normal to work 12 hours per shift in the event industry. And I don't think, at night, indeed, and I don't think that's really normal. So maybe start with that. Of course, a bit higher wages to make sure you can work a bit less. That would also be very nice. I would also say maybe open the conversation. So make it maybe obligated to talk about it in your company, like a session every month, every week. Make it open, make it accessible for your employees. A union, something like that would be really
I'm hooking on to making a conversation open. So how could you do that? Because we talk often about how everything should be transparent, and we should be able to talk about these things, but this seems really difficult. Do you have any ideas on that?
I think that every little evening or gathering is a step already. So I would say whatever you can organize in a bigger scale or smaller scale, do it. But what would really help to open the conversation, or at least what would help me, is to see that other people have the same issues. So maybe step up and open the conversation, like lead by example, actually.
Yeah.
Tell them that it's not strange to feel that, tell it's not weird. And maybe for me, I'm working as a manager, so I have people that I need to guide, need to delegate tasks to. So they are kind of looking up to me, or they're seeing me in a different role. So I would say that also managers can have issues, and also managers can be sad, and also they cannot feel well. So maybe make it human again, to not be a superhero at all times.
Yeah, it's a good one. Veronique, do you have any other things that you as a professional within this field?
Trying to improve the well-being on the side, but it is hard. But I think, like you're mentioning, check-ins with people, just checking in, and not during a shift, but outside of shifts when there's room to talk and space to think. I think that's a very good one. And also having a designated spot that's like very quiet, where somebody can always retreat during the night. Instead of having this messy backstage where people are just smoking and drinking and you're just overstimulated trying to have a break.
Yeah.
I think that should be mandatory at every venue, but also having good alcohol-free options behind the bar, also for the audience. Not just sugary drinks, but also stuff that will give you healthy ways of energy, healthy snacks that will keep you energized instead of having to rely on alcohol or drugs to keep on going, also when you're working. And also working with shifts that ensure that everybody's going to get the rest that they need. So building a schedule that is not as long as, like Anke said, but also making sure that there's plenty of days in between, so you have time to recover. So I think like the whole structure should change, but also expectations of employers, of people. But also giving room to them to be able to address these things and to be able to lift that stigma, because there's still a lot of stigma around it. But also taking care of the physical health is a very big one for me, and that's also where I coach a lot on, because you can be as sane as mine if you want to, but if your body is collapsing, you're still feeling like shit. So usually I work through the body upwards. So I think if you take care of your body already during the night, that will make a lot of difference also how you feel mentally in order to be able to endure that night shift.
Yeah. How about you, Sami, as a artist perspective?
I think, exactly what they said also about destigmatizing these experiences would help a lot, because it can be very lonely to experience this while also being exposed to this continuous cycle of competition and visibility that you have to show. So I guess also showing to each other that you're actually a human being that is vulnerable is just essential to create a safe environment actually, where failure is not something that you should be punished for or afraid to share with your agent. For instance, agencies should have a professional at hand that they can call when an artist is having a breakdown or is continuously sick. So I guess these integrations of mental health into the professional sphere also, for instance, maybe clubs should even have a professional side of them that checks in with these with people that suffer from these issues, would also be a very big change. I guess professionally integrating mental health into the professional work sphere. Yeah.
All right. Well, we don't have much time anymore, so these were my questions. For our audience, we have about 10 minutes to answer your questions. When you have a question, please stand up, and I'll repeat your question before our panel will be able to answer. Anybody out there? Yes? Okay, so I'll try and repeat the question. So how do you prepare yourself for a night? And do you have any tips for newcomers to this industry?
Yeah, I do. It really depends a bit on what you're doing. If you're preparing for partying, that's definitely different than preparing for working. But for me, set a goal for the evening as well. Like if I go for my job, I want to know after the job if I'm down to still hang a bit with my colleagues or go to bed. So it really depends on my other plans. But I never go into an evening without a plan, because then it's very easy to lose yourself. It's always very cozy, it's always super fun, and yeah, one beer is not really a thing. So have a plan. Second of all, yeah, while working, I don't use drugs or alcohol at all, because I just don't want to combine that. It's too easy that if you work a lot and you are gonna combine that, where's the limit? So for me, yeah, leave that at home. Don't bring it, because I think that if it's in your pocket, it's accessible. Yeah, I think that are my two tips.
Is there anybody who wants to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I guess also normalize just closing yourself off a bit before playing for a gig. I guess getting your focus there, but also at the same time, it's also nice to go to a club before a gig and just check it out a bit and hang at the bar, just be a sort of stranger within the situation where you can really taste the atmosphere, and then just dive into your own focus and go for it. I guess those are more practical tips. And also substance abuse you should just avoid within the professional sphere. I also don't do it anymore, because it has no future.
Well, if you're a night worker, I kind of developed my own protocol that I started implementing when I went back to working night shifts again after the pandemic. After having a normal sleep cycle for 2 years, I didn't want to go back to feeling like a zombie for the majority of the week. It's on my Instagram, the majority of the protocol, so you can check that out. What it basically comes down to is having good light exposure during the day when you're awake, strategically timing your use of stimulants, like caffeine in that sense, making sure you have proper nutrition beforehand, but also during the night, and also making sure your sleep hygiene is on point, also leading up to the working night you're going to do. Those are the biggest factors contribute in that protocol, I would say, but you can check it out on my Instagram.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Yes? Oh, good. Okay, so I would like to repeat the question. How do you work in nightlife while also being academically active? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's very hard. I guess by also, well, what I did, I also studied for a long time, so I did gave myself some extra bonus time to also be perceiving like this career while studying. But yeah, I think this is really hard. I guess like really good planning and also building this structural sense of rest and relaxation in between. But it is hard. But what I have as a key rule is avoiding any substance abuse, because that just, doesn't help your brain at all. Also to be sharp, for example, writing essays or doing exams. So if you already avoid that, that is like a really good, that's something that can also really help to maintain a focus on studying. Yeah, I think that mostly avoiding even drinking alcohol. I don't drink alcohol anymore as well, so I guess just stay sober if you want to be an academic superstar, but also be a DJ. Yeah.
Yeah, Veronique, so we talked a little bit earlier about that you were studying while also programming, while also starting your own business. So
yeah.
Maybe you can also elaborate on this.
Yeah, like you said, planning, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Sticking to your planning, because you can make the planning, but you also have to stick to it.
How do you do that? Please tell me. I don't know how to.
Yeah, just being strict on yourself, I guess. I also still don't know how I did it, but I just had the planning. I set the boundaries. It's like, okay, I have to do this, because there was a funding behind it to finish my studies. And also, yeah, I just wanted to start off with the business as soon as the school was closed. So I had that deadline. Yeah, I think I just did it somehow. I just went with the flow. I had the end goal inside. I knew what I wanted to achieve, and that for me was enough motivation. And I also steered clear of partying as much as possible, and also steering clear of drugs and alcohol. I very rarely drink anyway, so that was easy for me. Yeah, and staying away from the nights as well, to keep your normal sleeping rhythm. So you're also productive during the day if you have to be awake. I think that's how I did it. But for me, also the last few months are a bit of a blur because of all the stuff I had going on. But yeah, I think more or less the same what Sammy said.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of our panel discussion and the Beyond the Club series. I would like to thank all my guests. Thank you so much for coming out and talking about your experiences. I would also like to thank Oase and Operator Radio. And on behalf of Point Club, I would thank you all for coming and listening tonight. We really appreciate it. We think these are important topics and there's more to come. More to come tonight as well, because, yeah, I don't know if you still do nights, but there's a party going on tonight at Perron. You know, we all do love to dance. So, yeah, you're welcome to join us. And otherwise, hope to see you next time.